Hello.
Hi, long time no see.
So long. Welcome to True Crime
Tea and
and
tea.
Tangents. Did you just stop saying that word one syllable into saying that word?
Yeah, I my brain literally froze, and so my whole body was like, "No, panic!" So it was good times. Good times happening right in this head space.
I'm your host, Bonnie Watkins.
Oh yeah, and so we were gonna trade, and I was gonna do the host first thing, so I could remind Bonnie that I was gonna be like, "Hey," and I'm your host, Duca K. I'm gonna throw that out there so that it flows, so it doesn't.
Two
You know,
names.
ah.
Two names does flow better.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, yeah, so we recorded one yesterday and we're recording one today. Usually we just record them once a week. But despite all that, we still had like a solid 15 minutes of pre-record chit chat.
Yep. I was thinking too, as we were chit chatting, I'm like, I should just push record right now. And then we could add this in tangent wise if we don't tangent, but I'm really great at tangenting.
I
Tan-
don't
so
Having tangents, I don't think has been our problem to
no,
date.
no.
But Juka, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking snow juice with tangerine drops.
Water? You're having water?
Yeah.
I
Mm.
think I think if you're gonna rename water for the purposes of this podcast, you could call it snow tea.
Oh, yes. It's cold brew snow liquefied into a tea. So
With a citrusy element added.
a citrusy element added. So good. And just to make it really exciting, I did add some trace minerals just to really keep everything running smoothly.
Oh, that is exciting.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking raspberry tea.
Oh,
It's it's a
classic.
classic, right? Like it's just an oldie but a goodie.
Mm-hmm.
There's just days when you're like, wow, today's been crazy. I
You know
want
what?
something soothing.
Yep. But not like so soothing you're going to fall asleep. Like chamomile might put you in that too relaxed state of mind.
Yes, especially during the workday, which is when we often record these.
Mm-hmm.
So you just need like mildly like heartwarming soothing.
Right. And it's just got such a mild, delicious taste.
Yeah, I mean it's not as good as an actual raspberry. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Correct. Because it is the leaf. So it does
This
have a green type of taste. I'm not going to lie. But it's so good. It's such a great all over toner for our body. I think that's the reason why it feels like a warm hug. You're like,
yeah, it's nice. And
yes,
it's just been kind of a hectic day, like we were talking about. So it's nice to just have something a little bit more relaxing in this window of time.
yes, I love it. I love it. Well, Bon, I'm excited because I actually know what you're going to talk about today. I didn't do any like, but I'm excited. So spill the
Are
tea.
you okay? Okay. Okay. Once more for good measure. Okay.
Okay.
So our last episode, I feel like this should be, I should like name them as like a part one and a part two kind of a thing. Our last episode about Merritt and Karen, we discussed possible suspects for their murder, and one of them was John Brennan Crutchley. And in looking into him for their murders, as you well know, I got so curious about just him that I just continued to research him. And our episode today is now focused around John Brennan Crutchley and his known and unknown, like but heavily guessed at victims.
Mm. This sounds like this is going to be like kind of a gruesome one. Like he sounds kind
Yeah,
of
no,
like,
100%. I actually should give like I have this warning, um, big time trigger warning for anybody with sexual assault or rape or anything. There's a lot of rape and sexual assault and just horrific, gruesome, awful details. His nickname was the vampire rapist, right?
uh-huh.
Not a good man. And a lot of the details in this case are quite gruesome and kind of yucky. So if you don't want to listen to this one, I don't blame you.
And he wasn't like,
Not you. You don't have a choice.
yeah, I know, but what? Like, sorry, gotta go.
But everybody else.
Well, he wasn't like raping people dressed as vampires. Was he dressing as a vampire, or am I jumping ahead?
Oh, you're so jumping ahead, but
Okay,
that's
cool.
okay. Um, Sources for this episode include oxygen.com, Gruesome, Horrific True Crime, John Brennan Crutchley. That's a podcast episode of the podcast Gruesome, Horrific True Crime. The American Academy of Forensic Science, 10minutemurder.com, wikipedia.org, and Southern Fried True Crime, which is another podcast, episode 75.
Okay, so I love the title of Gruesome True Crime. Like they just lay it right out there. This is going to be
They
horrific.
do.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
They do. And I will say, just to get this out of the way, yesterday, well, the last episode, which for us happened to be yesterday, we discussed him as a possible suspect in the murders of Merritt and Karen.
Mm-hmm.
The more I researched him, the more I really don't think, I think he's an awful human being. I think he's responsible for a lot of bad things. I don't think he's responsible for Merritt and Karen's murders.
Yeah, that was the vibe I got yesterday as well. So I'm excited to hear more about it and, solidify that as well.
Okay. So October 1946 is when John Crutchley is born.
Okay.
He is born in Clarksburg, West Virginia.
See, West Virginia.
Well, that's part of why he was a suspect in the other one, right? The West
Right.
Virginia connection. But from birth, I mean, his life was not good. So shortly before he was born, his older sister passed away. And
Wow.
his she went in for emergency surgery and she died on the table.
Okay. All right. Well, it's 1946. I feel like that happened kind of a lot.
It did happen more often than it does now.
Mm-hmm.
But his mom, John's mom, was devastated about losing her daughter. And she was pregnant, like early on pregnant at the time. And she was 100% very confident that the baby was going to be a girl to like make up for the loss of her daughter.
Ooh.
And so when the nurses handed her a baby boy,
She was like, no.
She was super mad. Like from the moment he was born, he was a disappointment to his parents.
Oh, that is so horrible.
Yeah, his mom often referred to him as the wrong child, and she would dress him as a girl for the first 6 years of his life. If he tried to complain or say, I don't want this, she just ignored him. If he irritated her, which a lot of what he did irritated her, then his father would just start beating him. And so he was just brutally beaten for like his whole childhood.
That poor kid.
Just for being a boy.
That is terrible.
At one point, his dad burned his fingers with an iron. Oftentimes he would hit him hard enough that he would lose consciousness, right? Like a terrible, terrible childhood.
Yeah. Well, that literally damages the brain.
Yes. So as you would expect, he grew up to be a very quiet, reclusive kid, an adult. He did not interact much with other people, loved electronics and technology, and he was really good at it. He would repair, when he was in high school, he would repair other people's like radios and electronics they would bring to him. And he eventually went on to college. He obtained a degree in physics and got a master's in engineering. So very, very high IQ, very smart individual, shy, reclusive, very good with technology.
Well, just his upbringing tells him that if he rocks the boat, then he's going to get hit in the head, right? So he is, of course, going to be really quiet. Oh man, that's terrible. I'm sorry, baby John.
So he married his first wife in 1969, but their marriage didn't last very long. They ended up being divorced before he finished his master's degree, and he ended up moving to Indiana to work for a company with some cutting edge technology.
Okay.
And he was there for a while, but then he just abruptly moved from Indiana to Fairfax County, Virginia.
Okay.
And after he left, the company noticed that some important materials had just kind of disappeared. They launched an internal investigation, but no one could tie the missing equipment specifically to John. And so he was never charged with anything. But then, same thing, he's working at this major electronics firm in Washington, D.C. before he just like very suddenly up and leaves. And this time he moves to Florida. And once again, coinciding with the time of his disappearance, they noticed that a lot of sensitive materials had disappeared.
I am seeing a pattern with this a little bit. probably our dear listeners are as well.
But this time, he wasn't working for a tech company. He was working for the federal government. He was working with
Oh,
top secret classified materials.
oh,
And so they were looking a little more in depth into what could have happened.
uh-huh.
He also, between living in Virginia and moving to Florida, remarried.
Okay, I was about to ask you that because you had mentioned first marriage. And I'm like, when is his second marriage going to come up?
So
Okay.
he married again, and he had, with his wife, they had a little baby boy.
Okay.
So all of this could have kind of gone on indefinitely, right? He could have been like working and then moving, stealing information from companies, except for one day when everything changed.
Okay.
November 22nd, 1985.
Wow. So he's like
So,
39 years old.
yep.
I mean, I was just like, okay.
And if you'll notice, we're already past the 1970 time frame.
Yeah, because that was like 77-ish.
It was 1970.
Yeah.
So we're 15 years past that, and he's in Florida. So on the evening of November 22nd, 1985, a nude teenage girl, handcuffed at both the feet and the ankles, was crawling alongside the road, covered in bruises, beaten. She had been passed by several trucks. She'd been trying to flag their attention and get help. Nobody stopped to help her until eventually one driver did.
Well, I really hope that they legitimately did not see her. There's no way you're not stopping for somebody naked on the side of the road.
Well, I would hope that too. But I have to be honest, like, if it was just me driving alone with kids and I saw that, I would be a little nervous about stopping.
Right. But I think I would still call, like, maybe.
I would call the police.
Yeah.
I would be like, hey, and
So
I would probably like, I don't know if I would let them into my car, right? But I think I would stop.
mm-hmm.
And if it was just me, I'd be a lot less hesitant. But like if I just had my kids in the car, like my
Right.
little kids,
100%.
I would, in any event, I would call the police. But nobody was stopping to help her until eventually somebody did.
Thank
And
goodness.
she just begged the driver not to take her back to that house. And when he asked her what she meant, she told him about this particular house. He took her home, called for a police and ambulance, and then noted the location of the house to the police.
Okay.
So it's a really good Samaritan.
Okay. Yeah.
So at the hospital where the ambulance took her, they determined, and her name was Laura Murphy. I'm so sorry. I don't think I told you that. Her name was Laura.
Yeah, I was going to ask, but thanks. That's great.
The hospital determined that Laura was missing between 40 to 45% of her blood.
That's a lot.
They also determined that if she had not gotten any help, she would have been dead from a loss of blood within 12 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
So she's like on the cusp of death.
And she is crawling along a highway.
Handcuffed at the feet and ankles.
Like handcuffed feet, right? Like hand, foot.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. You're not making very much. That's like this much progress, like an inch of progress, inch and a half of play.
Yeah. No. So she had been hitchhiking the day before, November 21st, when a man that she identified as John Crutchley picked her up and said that he would take her to where she wanted to go, which was Melbourne, Florida. But he told her that he had to stop by his house first to pick up a notebook that he needed for work. And she said, okay, that's fine. Do what you need to do. So they get to his house and he invites her in, but she said, oh, no, I'm okay. You can just run in and get, what you need. At which point he tied a ligature around her neck, choked her into unconsciousness, and dragged her into his house.
Okay.
And then he removes all of her clothing and ties her to the counter in his kitchen. In case you're wondering, his wife and child were away at the time.
Yeah, I was wondering. That's what
I could see it in your face.
I was like, but is he still married? Does he have a wife?
I mean, it's the Thanksgiving holiday, and his wife and his son were visiting some of her relatives up in Maryland.
Right.
So he is home alone. No kids, no wife, no.
And
just
he lives in Florida still.
They live in Florida at this point. His family's in Maryland. He's home alone. He has this girl. He has Laura strapped and tied to his kitchen counter. Okay. She wakes up realizing that she's tied and that her arms and legs are completely immobile, but she sees that a video camera was set up along with lights And he's videotaping this whole thing.
Holy smokes.
After she regains consciousness, he rapes her and then puts needles into her arms and wrist and extracts her blood and begins to drink it.
Gross.
Hence, a
Hence the
vampire rapist.
vampire. But
then he would handcuff her and put her in the bathtub. And then he would bring her back out and return later. Like, so another round of sexual assault, another round of blood extraction. And this just goes on and on.
wow, that's horrible. Horrible. That the brain has a hard time even like fathoming this scenario.
Right? Like it's awful. And I'm just going to share with you a picture of this man because I also maybe it's because I knew he was called the vampire rapist,
You're like, I gotta know.
but like he is so. Do you see him?
Oh, okay.
Now,
Somebody married him?
to be fair, this is not what he looked like at the time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
This is what he looked like after some time in prison, which is a spoiler alert. He does go to prison.
I hope so. I'm so glad to hear that. Okay.
But people would refer to him like I'm reading these articles and stuff, and people kept referring to him as a handsome. And I'm like, I'd seen this picture. This was the picture I had seen first, and I was like, I don't understand where they're getting that, but this is what he looked like at the time.
Well, before you change pictures really quickly, in case you're
late, I already did it.
Well, in case you're just listening on like a podcast and not doing the YouTube, he's very slender, very, very pale, short gray hair because he's been in prison. That's a prison picture, and big brown glasses. So, and the picture that Bonnie is showing,
and he looks like a vampire. He looks like a creepy old school, like not a handsome, attractive, like romanticized vampire,
right?
But like a creepy vampire,
and like an ancient one, super old, very like gaunt, almost even with his cheekbones. Yes. His ears are kind of even pointed like a cartoon almost. It's anyway, you might want to just jump over to YouTube if you're curious and double check like what it looks like. I do think it's interesting that they referred to him as handsome, and he looks basically the same as he did in prison, only he has brown hair and more like flesh toned.
Well, I think, he doesn't have, and this particular picture doesn't have the glasses, but you can see the glasses marks on his nose. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's his skin pallor. I think that's part of what contributes to how vampiristic he looks in his prison photo.
Well, that and the fact, that too. Plus, like, obviously what he was doing added to that bonus.
Yes, it definitely gives kind of that vibe. But he is not like, but he's not a terrible looking person. No. He's not. If I saw him on the street, I would not think to myself, you are probably a serial rapist.
Right. Exactly. Because I'm like, I think I can take you. Like 100% sure that I can overwhelm you with my own physical strength. Because it doesn't seem that strong. He seems very slender and slight.
Seems like you could snap him like a twig.
Yeah, basically. And I do think though that you look at him and you hear about his tech background and you're like, yeah, I can see him wearing a pocket protector. He 100%. Looks like a brainy type.
He doesn't look like a threat, right?
No.
He doesn't look like a threat.
Which so is probably why she's like, hey, hitchhiking is dangerous. But
I can go with him.
Look he's not a threat.
Yeah. Threat. So it's the next morning. Laura has endured an entire night of this. Crutchley handcuffs her and leaves her in the bathroom, saying that he's going to come back later, and if she tries to escape, his brother will come and kill her. Which is a complete lie, but that's fine. She doesn't know that, obviously. Right. But she decides to try and risk it anyway. Yeah. So after she hears him leave, she pushes out the bathroom window and crawls to the road.
That's amazing.
I know. She is like a fierce survivor. She's incredible.
Yeah. I'm super impressed because she's doing this all handcuffed and in the nude.
Yes. And actually she was initially and in West Virginia. It's not warm there in November.
She's in Florida.
Florida. You're right. Yeah. Sorry.
So it's probably okay temperature. And if it's daylight, is it daylight? Is it daytime?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she'd probably be all right as far as warmth goes, thank goodness. But still, crawling hands and knees.
Well, and she's probably not okay warmth-wise because she's lost 50% of her blood.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
That's
she pushes through it anyway.
yeah.
Like,
She's just like, I'm gonna running. I'm getting out of here.
yep. So she is initially too traumatized to be willing to file charges or to work with the police to file charges. But she works with a rape counselor, and they're eventually able to work with her and explain and help her understand that if he is not caught or put into jail, then he is going to find more people and he is going to harm more people.
Right.
And so she agrees to work with the police to help bring a case against him.
That's fantastic. That's even
So
more
the,
powerful.
it is. So the police serve a search warrant on his house based off of, her evidence and her testimony. But a lot of the evidence that was already there has already been contaminated, right? As soon as he got back and noticed she was gone,
Right. He's
he
bleaching
started
everything.
taking some steps to protect himself. So there was a videotape in the camera, but it was partially erased. Everything to do with Laura and her rapes and the extraction of her blood, that had already been erased. The first search of the house takes place at 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
and it's interesting. I don't know if this is the police's fault or indicative of the search warrant, because search warrants, sometimes you're allowed to take things with you and sometimes you're not, depending on the terms of the search warrant.
Right.
But the first search of his house, they found a stack of credit cards that were several inches thick, like big old stack of credit cards. And they found a collection of women's necklaces and locks of hair,
See,
but
that
they
seems important.
they didn't take those with them.
That seems like that would be important.
And that's what I don't know if they just made a mistake or if the search warrant allowed them to look but not take. Because sometimes you can have a search warrant that says you can't remove items from the home. Not often, because that's kind of the point of a search warrant.
Right.
So I don't know who I want to blame on that one,
Well,
but I'm blaming somebody.
yes, somebody definitely did something wrong. And I want to say, like, I know that it's the mid 80s, right, when this is happening. But still, why don't you leave, like, when you see this, like, leave somebody there still searching the house, right? And then go and contact the judge and like update that search warrant if it was indeed the search warrant that was like, you can look, but you can't take anything with you.
Yeah,
Like
because when they go back for a second search, the credit card stack and the women's necklaces and hair are gone.
of course they are. I mean, he has a master's degree. It's not like he's not a dumb guy.
No. They are able to find in their second search a stack of 72 index cards. And on these index cards, Crutchley had written the names of women and some men, along with a description of sexual performances, like
Wow.
with them. The police contacted these people, and a lot of them indicated that he had crossed a line from like kind of kinky consensual sex acts into sexual assault, but they had just never reported it. It's so hard when something starts out consensual too and moves into non-consensual. It's just a really hard case. And we already know that rape is an incredibly underreported crime, and even more so in the 80s, right?
Right.
But they also determined from contacting these people that his wife had cooperated in some of these acts and had been party to at least some of what he was doing. And when the press gets a hold of what's happening to Laura and Crutchley's arrest, she makes a comment to the press and she says that his attack on Laura was a gentle rape devoid of any overt brutality. So she's
What?
defending him.
Oh my, what? No, no, just no. That's, you, wow, that's ballsy to say.
Yeah, it didn't go over well.
No, I can imagine it did not. That didn't go over well with me.
And she does. She stands by him the whole time. The whole situation. She thinks that she pleads for mercy for him and stands by his side the whole time. She doesn't even say he didn't do it. She just says it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. Now I'm curious as what her background growing up was.
I know. I couldn't really find much. I couldn't find anything about their son. I know you're going to ask. I found nothing.
Okay, thank you.
So when they go after they've arrested him, the cops go and they search his office. And in his office, they find a number of sexually explicit photographs of unidentified women that are tied up and gagged and Crutchley is choking the women with his hands.
Oh boy.
They also find homemade sex tapes with Crutchley and his wife and dozens of photographs of just women in public places, like stalker photographs.
Oh my word.
So in June of 1986, so summer of the next year,
Right.
Crutchley pleads guilty to kidnapping and rape in exchange for prosecutors dropping the grievous bodily harm charge that they charged him with because he took her blood.
I don't know about that. I feel like that one seems like a much higher. Do they don't have evidence of that though? Do they? Is that why they're willing to drop it? Like what? I want him to have the higher, worst charge. Laura deserves better. Sorry.
Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was me. I just got a notification saying my internet connection is unstable.
Oh, okay. I did not get that. But
So
still,
it might not have been a you issue. It might have been a me issue.
it's been a rough morning, I tell you.
It's a long day for everybody, including the internet.
Yeah.
So you were saying you disagree.
I disagree on the whole dropping the grievous bodily harms. I feel like that's got much higher penalties to it.
And
And
kidnapping and rape?
oh, doesn't it? I mean, like I want him to be charged with everything. He needs to like all of it. Like
You just don't want the prosecutors to make a deal at all.
no, correct. No
Okay.
deal. You're a bad, bad man, hurt people. Nice people. No, no
Well,
deal.
if it makes you feel any better, during his sentencing, the whole drinking the blood thing came up anyway. Like
okay.
that came up when they were talking to the judge. And Crutchley said that he had been introduced to blood drinking by a nurse as part of a sexual ritual in 1970. And then he said that the judge shouldn't consider it in this case because he had not actually drunk the blood because it coagulated too fast and he couldn't get it down. Not like that he didn't do it, but just that her blood coagulated too fast, so it was too hard to drink. That was his like, hey, don't think about it, Judge. I didn't actually do
It's no
it.
big deal. I didn't. I mean, I took her blood, but I didn't actually drink her blood. But isn't that point? Is that he took it?
Yeah. During the sentencing, his wife didn't speak to the judge, but she spoke to reporters and told them that her husband was not guilty and he was just, and I quote, a kinky sort of guy.
Okay. So sorry. My son is in the room and he overheard that part. He was like, he cried, and he cracked up because like, who says that? Who like look at I don't know who his attorney is, but he needs to have her stop talking to the press. She's not helping his case. Not that his help, I want him to have any help at all, but like, golly gee whiz, woman, should they be trying her too?
The press, well, she was out of town when Laura's case happened, right? There was nothing that she could be tied to with her in any way, shape, or form. And this is, frustratingly enough, and you're going to get frustrated, this is the only crime he's ever charged with.
Oh. Okay, I thought you're gonna go back and be like, and 27 of the 72 people were like, no. Okay.
No. So they did, when they were investigating his case, they brought on an FBI profiler. His name was Robert, Pioneers of Criminal Profiling. And he came to the conclusion from the evidence and from what he was looking at that not only had they caught almost certainly a serial rapist because of all of these pictures and all of these phone calls they had with other people, but very probable that they had caught a serial killer.
Okay. I was about to say great. It's not great, but I was wondering when that would come up. Like, who, like, was she like, did she luck out that she broke out and were they?
Well, absolutely, she lucked out. If nothing else, in 12 hours, she would have been dead from blood loss.
Right.
Even if he hadn't done anything else to her, he wasn't putting blood back into her. He was just taking it out. Right. But even if he hadn't done anything else to her, she would have died within 12 hours.
So how many other people had this happen to?
Well, let me keep going and I'll tell you.
All right. Okay.
So part of the reason that Ressler thinks this is because everything about this crime, it was practiced and controlled, right? It wasn't impulsive. It was very methodical. The way that he restrained Laura, the way that he drained his blood, like it all suggested that this wasn't his first time. and that if there had been others before her, they just weren't as lucky or as strong as she was and hadn't escaped and were probably dead.
Right.
And if you look too of his past, not just with crime and with these women, but even just moving across state lines, stealing, equipment and information from these companies without getting caught.
Right.
Right. If he applied that same kind of precision to these violent crimes, and the FBI thought that he probably did, then it was very possible that there were just victims scattered across multiple states. So we know that he lived in Indiana, we know that he lived in Virginia, we know that he lived in Florida. Like very, very possible that there's just a scattering of women that he's left in his wake.
Right. Okay.
So there are some suspected victims,
Okay.
like that they've been able to not tie enough to bring charges to him, but tie enough that they think that these are suspected victims of Crutchley.
Okay.
So the first one, her name is Deborah Rita Fitzjohn. And she disappeared. She was a 25-year-old secretary in Fairfax, Virginia, who disappeared on January 28th, 1978.
Okay.
At the time of her disappearance, Crutchley was actually under pretty close scrutiny because he was Fitzjohn's boyfriend at the time, before his second marriage.
Right.
And she was last seen alive at the trailer park where he lived.
Right.
And so he was questioned several times regarding her disappearance, but he just stuck to a story that she had visited him the night she vanished, but he fell asleep in front of the television and she was gone when he woke up.
Okay.
And they couldn't find anything to disprove that or to tie her disappearance to him. Her remains were found by a hunter in October of the following year.
Oh.
Now, when Crutchley was arrested, 7 years later, investigators found the business card of the chief investigator in Deborah's case, along with his possessions. So it's a weird thing to keep for 7 years.
Yep. Unless it's a souvenir.
So another suspected victim is Patty Lou Valansky, who was last seen on March 15th, 1985, by her roommate when she decided to hitchhike. And she left their Florida residence and decided to go out. She has not been seen or found, or nothing with her body has ever been found. But when they were looking into Crutchley,
right,
when they arrested him, they found Valansky's photo ID card. And he acknowledged that he had picked her up hitchhiking in around March sometime.
but of course
he said about 6 months, before he was arrested, which would put it May, not March, but real close window, right? But he says that she was obnoxious and she was making these obnoxious demands. And so he just ordered her out of his car. And it wasn't until the next day that he just happened to find her identification on the seat of his vehicle. He just took it to his office without thinking and just, hadn't done anything with it since.
Never mailed it back to her or anything like that.
Yes. In addition to Patty Lou Valansky, there was 5 other identification cards for 5 other women that were found in his work desk. One of them belonged to Nancy K. Brown, who disappeared while she was vacationing in Florida in 1983. And her remains were found on March 8th of 1984. Then there was also Cheryl Ann Windsor. She had been found in 1984 just floating in a creek.
Oh.
And she had been reported missing. So she was found in May, and she'd been reported missing in April by her mother. And it took them some time to identify her, but they were able to positively identify her as Cheryl Ann Windsor. And also there was Diana Lee Casey, whose remains were found in Florida in 1984 as well. And so all of these women, their identification cards were all...
He had all of them
in his office.
He just picks up a lot of hitchhikers and they all happen to be obnoxious, and then they accidentally leave their ID behind.
I mean, seems plausible.
Does it though? Does it really?
There were also in 1985, a lot happens in 1985 in this case. In Florida, they found 23 bone fragments, which were believed to be partial remains of two different women.
Wow.
Some of the bones were identified as the remains of a woman named Kimberly Ann Walker. Kimberly Ann Walker, but there were bones from a pelvis, leg, and foot that from another woman that has still to date been unidentified. And
Doesn't
Kimberly
match.
Ann Walker, she was last seen in June of 1984, getting into a light colored small car at a convenience store,
Mhm.
which that's very vague. There's a lot of light colored small cars in the world. But at the
Right.
time, Crutchley did own a beige colored Nissan Stanza, which is a light colored small car,
Does also match that description.
but also
Match a
lots.
lot of others.
Yes. There was
Well,
also, we're not done. There's more people.
oh gosh. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah. My
So
goodness.
sorry to cut you off. Also, there was the body of Lynn K. DeSantis. She
Uh-huh.
was found in a ditch in Florida on November 26th of 1985, and she had last been seen hitchhiking outside of a motel in Florida, and her death was also ruled a homicide.
Okay. How is Lynn, was her ID in his office as well?
Not that I was able to find, no, but she was just in the area, right? This was his area of Florida,
Right.
and so that's kind of it's much weaker tie,
Right.
but at
Well,
this point,
unless an autopsy shows that she was missing a lot of blood,
which is hard to do when somebody's been
dead for a while.
mhm. Yeah, it's because the decomposition process starts, right?
Yeah,
Like, and
absolutely.
there's all of these people were found out in the wild, so you also have
Mhm.
animals to contend with. I think it's going to be hard to determine that information.
Yeah, I'm actually impressed that they found that many remains at all
Yeah,
because,
we're not done yet either.
oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Carry on.
That's okay. No, I mean, I
I'm
love
just
your
like,
interjections. There's more though.
okay.
In 1995, so much later, the Naval Criminal Investigative Services began to investigate Crutchley for two women who were murdered at the base in 1982.
Wow.
And their names were Pamela and Kimbrew and Carol and Molnar. And Pamela Dement, she disappeared in 1982, and Carol disappeared in 1983. At the time, Crutchley had access to this naval air station because of his job.
Uh-huh.
And Pamela was found at the end of a seaplane ramp later that same year, and she had been choked with a clothesline. And Carol was found, she disappeared in February, and she was found in May at the Norfolk base underneath some rocks.
Oh,
And
okay.
she had been choked to death as well. Then also in 2010, there were some hunters found the remains of a body in a densely wooded area in Florida near his home, like very close to his home.
Right.
And it was a woman, it was another female, but they have not been able to identify her. And she is currently known as just the Brevard County Doe because she was found in Brevard County. And her body was found very close to Crutch's home as well. So she's another just suspected victim. Feels
Just
like you
tied.
want to say something.
I do. Just generally tied into maybe his victim count because of him being there and her proximity to his house and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
All that.
Yeah. And so he was never formally connected to any of those murders or to any of those disappearances. He was suspected in several of them, but there was never enough. And he never felt the urge to confess if he did do them. He always said, that Laura was the only crime that he had committed. And I don't think he actually saw it as a crime since it was, a gentle rape, quote unquote.
Right.
So the only thing he was ever charged and convicted with were his crimes against Laura, and he was sentenced to 16 years in prison.
Wow.
But he was released after 11.
Oh, okay. All right. Um, so where is he now?
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, yes. I think we would all feel safer knowing where he is
So
now.
he was released after serving 11 years in prison. The day after he paroled,
Mm-hmm.
he was arrested again. He tested positive for marijuana, which was illegal in Florida at the time. And Florida has the three strike rule, which
Okay.
means once you've committed three crimes, have an automatic life sentence.
Oh, dang.
So he had pled guilty to two crimes with
Right.
Laura.
Mm-hmm.
His parole officer counted him testing positive for marijuana as a third crime and just put him right back in jail.
The day after.
I'm
Oh my
guessing to
word.
me, that feels like his parole officer did not want him to be free.
No, his parole officer was like, bad man. Gonna keep being a bad man. I'm gonna check on him.
Yep. Crutchley had stated that he was nervous just because he'd been in prison for 11 years and he wasn't sure what life was going to look like. He was being released to a halfway house, and so he just smoked some marijuana to kind of calm down. But his
Mm-hmm.
parole officer was like, "Nope, jail in life for you."
For you. Yeah. When we say no, we mean no.
Yep. So on March 30th of 2002, Crutchley died in prison.
Okay.
Let me tell you how though, because it's
Okay. This is like one of those episodes you watch late night TV where you're like, you could buy this thing right now for 19.95, and if you call within the next 10 minutes, we'll give you this. But wait, there's more. This is like the most terrible version of that ever. Where it's like, I, but wait, can there be more? How could there be more?
it just keeps going. So
Wow.
he was found dead with a plastic bag over his head.
That does
The,
seem sus.
the reported cause of death was asphyxiation.
Yep.
And in August 1st of 2003, so later, the Florida Department of Corrections issued a statement saying that he had died of autoerotic asphyxiation.
Oh
So he
my.
was strangling himself to like get off and died.
Or someone else is strangling him.
Well, he was in solitary.
Oh,
I
okay,
mean,
great.
he
All
was
right.
in solitary when he died.
So it definitely wasn't, there's no other suspect. It's just
But
him.
it was definitely just him. And that is the story of the
It's not,
vampire rapist.
I don't know if I needed to know that. I mean, I did. I would definitely be asking, well, Bonnie, how did he die under such suspicious circumstances? That's truly gross, though.
So gross. Absolutely the worst, but not a fit for Merritt and Karen's death, right? I
Right.
don't think
No, I
it doesn't
definitely still
feel
think
like a fit to me.
no, it's not. It definitely
None,
not him.
none of his suspected people that he had killed, none of his suspected victims were decapitated,
Correct.
right? A lot of them were choked. That seemed to be a thing for him, but like there's a big difference between choking somebody and decapitating somebody.
Right. And
And sexual assault was, sorry, what?
their decapitation was so meticulous.
Yes. And he's a meticulous person. So that I'm fine with.
Yep.
But
Mm-hmm.
sexual assault was the driving motivator and factor behind all of his crimes, it seems like. And there really is zero evidence that Merritt and Karen were sexually assaulted.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did like to pick up hitchhikers, and they were
Right.
hitchhiking.
Um, it doesn't he doesn't seem like the right fit for their murderers though.
No, I still feel like it was Hacker. Like
Yeah.
if you had to like, who do you think did it? I think Hacker killed Merritt and Karen, and that Crutchley killed lots of other people,
Lots.
but not those two girls.
So he never got that urge to like, well, I'm about to die. Well, no, he did not. He did not. No, no, never mind.
No, he just
Yep.
strangled himself to death.
Mhm. Gross. Um, so nothing about like, did he divorce his wife? Did his wife divorce him?
I would have loved to tell you what happened with that relationship, but I could not find a single thing. I couldn't find their kid's name, which I mean, I'm grateful for that child so that they could maybe have some level of anonymity. I couldn't find it. It sounded like his wife would stay with him. I mean, she was defending him all through, and it
What?
wasn't, it was, I want to say let's see, he was only in prison. What's 11 plus 6 for 17 years, which
Right.
isn't like a crazy amount of time to stay married to somebody in prison, especially if you don't think they're guilty of anything.
Well, I was just wondering because he was released to a halfway house, and why wasn't he released to his own house?
Well, that's pretty common too, though, so they have a chance to kind of like reintegrate into society.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
it's a fair point. It's a fair point because oftentimes you're also released to your own home if you have a home. Maybe his
Right.
wife had moved away. Maybe she's gone back to Maryland with her family. I'm not sure. I
Okay. So
couldn't
that,
find anything. I imagine the press turned pretty hard against his wife, when she was defending him. And so she kind of disappeared from the public eye after that. Smart move on her part.
something that someone could have advised her to do maybe before. I just wow. But I was curious because of what she was saying as to what her upbringing was, because it really smacks of her being sexually abused.
It absolutely does.
So
Like it absolutely, absolutely does. I agree with that 100%.
and the whole like I was sad, but also relieved when you told me you didn't know anything about the baby boy because I was really curious, like how did they treat their son?
I can't imagine it was well. I mean, on the one hand, maybe he was a great dad because of how he was raised. But on the other hand, maybe he assaulted his son all the time.
Right. Maybe he was a great dad because his proclivities were elsewhere, right?
Yeah, and they were towards females, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on that index card, on those 72 index
Right.
cards, there were some men.
Yep, absolutely.
So I
Well,
don't know.
how come you think he got like he seems like somebody who I don't know, I'm not sure how to phrase this question. Like he got rid of the evidence, but he also still kept evidence,
Well,
right?
that was one of the things, and that's become more known with profiling, right? Is that they need souvenirs.
Right.
Right, like by having and taking a souvenir, these killers like they can pull that out and like relive the experience. We know he videotaped some of the encounters as well, so he could actually relive the experience. But you could like take out their necklace or take out their identification or take out their lock of hair and like get that same kind of high that you got from killing and assaulting them,
Mm-hmm.
which is just disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I was just I mean,
And
I'm
even though it can sink them, right? They know it can sink them.
right,
They're caught and the police find that, but they can't not keep it.
right,
And
right.
also a lot of them feel like they're never going to get caught, which to be fair, he had been doing this for probably years
Yes.
and hadn't been caught.
When what's the date of the first victim they think who went missing? Because Laura's the last in 1986 or 1985.
Well, that's a good question.
And then I was going to ask you how many victims you think they think are tied to him. And honestly, I lost track after 7. I was doing like tally marks, but then I was just like, what? There's more?
1978 is the first suspected.
Mm-hmm.
But that is, and in the 80s, you still don't have a lot of states talking to each other. So
Right,
that's not looking at anything that might have happened in Indiana,
right.
right? That's just starting with Virginia and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, I mean, they don't have a number, right? But they think it's, I want to, they might have a number, but maybe I'm completely making this up. But I want to say I remember reading that Robert Ressler thought it could be as high as 30.
See, that's who I thought we'd get the number from, was Robert, the FBI profiler.
Yeah. Yeah. He was very involved in that case.
Wow. Wow.
Isn't it bonkers?
Yeah.
Like he's the worst. And then
Well,
we had to follow up on him after doing Merritt and Karen's story, but
mhm.
I also hate knowing all of that.
Yeah, I'm also kind of like, I kind of wish we hadn't. Do I feel better knowing? Well, he's dead. So yes, I'm glad I know that.
Yes, and he has been dead for over 20 years. So not a threat. He is not a threat to anybody anymore.
Oh, Wow. That was a ride that reminded me of our first podcast. No, not our first podcast. That all the Apprentice one.
Yeah, Dean Coral.
Thank you, Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, second episode.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. I was truly terrible. That was a truly terrible, like, wow, body count through the roof.
Yeah, I did not ease you into this true crime world at all.
So like, I don't, gentle listener, I have nothing to say. I don't even know. My brain is like fried. I have to go and process and finish my, beverage to just be like, just sit somewhere in a dark corner, kind of rocking myself.
Just put on like some Disney music, a little bit of something in the background. I'm gonna relax by having like a fish fry tonight. So
maybe a little My Little Pony.
I think My Little Pony is a little creepy. Like it's not Teletubby status, right?
But that's creepy.
Because that's true. Everybody agrees that that's creepy, but there's just something about it that's just ever so slightly off. Pretty much one of the only kids TV shows I will watch is Bluey.
Oh, that's a really good one. Maybe I'll just lean into it and go with Gravity Falls.
We were driving back from Colorado on Sunday, and we were going up the mountain, right? And my husband's gunning it, and he's passing, all the semi trucks and everything. And we get to like middle of this high, steep, whatever. And our 3-year-old is like, I need to pee. And so I'm like, hey, he needs to pee. So like Shane pulls off the side of the road, right? And he's like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. He's like racing to get our 3-year-old back into the car. And you can see the semi trucks that he's just passed, right? Like coming up. And he's like, no. We're both talking. There's an episode of Bluey. I don't know if you've seen it where they talk about the gray nomads.
Yes.
That's exactly. I was like, you remind me so much of Bandit right now. And he was like, Bluey's relatable, Bonnie.
And it is.
It's a great show. It is for children and adults.
It is. I'm not gonna lie. There are times I'm like, oh yeah, I could do a little bit of that.
I feel seen.
I'm just by myself in my house, but I could watch Bluey.
We don't have like a TV in our living room or anything anymore. But we still have one downstairs in the basement. And our 3-year-old has learned that like his best chance of getting me to say yes to watching anything is if he's like, but what if we just watch a little Bluey?
You're like, oh, you know me so well.
I know. Actually, it hasn't even worked lately. So he's just gone back to reverting to asking for monster trucks, which is his true love. So
it's one true love. Fine. If that's not gonna work, I'm gonna ask for what I really want. My one true love, monster trucks.
It is his one true love. He loves them so much.
He does. He's consistent. He's loved those for his whole life.
So,
well, thanks for that little conversation about fun shows at the end. It does help lighten the load.
I do what I can. I feel like if I'm going to destroy your life every week, the least I can do is, bring a tiny little bit of joy into it as well.
Well, actually just spending time with you on these podcasts is actually a lot of fun. So I appreciate that. All right. Well, we're at our time. The time is done.
So until next week, keep your tea hot
and your curiosity hotter.